178. Actors turned officials. During the early 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period, 2 major warlord factions still controlled parts of northern China. Lu Rengong in Yuzhou, modern Beijing. Li Qiang, the Prince of Jin, in Hedong, modern Shaanxi. At the same time, the Khitan people in the north were growing stronger. Their leader, Yelu Abaoji, had unified the Khitan tribes and established his own government. In 907 AD, Yelu Abaoji led 300,000 troops southward and captured Yunzhou, modern Datong, Shaanxi. Hoping to use the Khitan to defeat Zhou I, Emperor Taizu of later Liang, Li Qiang allied with Yelu Abaoji, and they met in Yunzhou to swear brotherhood and plan a joint invasion of later Liang. However, when Abaoji returned to Khitan, he saw that Zhou I was too powerful, so he broke the agreement and instead allied with Zhou I. When Li Qiang heard of this betrayal, he was so enraged that he nearly fainted. The following year, overwhelmed by exhaustion and anger, he fell ill with a severe infection and realized he would not recover. The 3 arrows of vengeance. On his deathbed, Li Qiang called his son, Li Kungsu, and warned him. Zhou I is our greatest enemy, you already know this. Lu Rengong was once my ally, but he later betrayed me and sided with Zhou I. The Khitan once swore brotherhood with me, but they broke their promise and turned against us. These are 3 debts of vengeance that must be repaid. He then ordered his attendants to bring 3 arrows and handed them to Li Kungsu. These 3 arrows represent our 3 enemies. Keep them as a reminder and avenge our family. Li Kungsu knelt by his father's bedside, tears in his eyes, and solemnly accepted the arrows. Only then did Li Qiang close his eyes and pass away. Li Kungsu's revenge and the fall of later Liang. After Li Qiang's death, Li Kungsu inherited his father's position as the Prince of Jin and focused on building a disciplined and formidable army. Determined to avenge his father, Li Kungsu kept the 3 arrows in his ancestral temple. Before every battle, he sent an official to retrieve the arrows, carrying them in a silk-covered case to the battlefield. After every victory, the arrows were returned to the temple. Over time, Li Kungsu led a series of major battles against later Liang, dealing devastating defeats to Zhou I's 500,000-strong army. Zhou I, humiliated and furious, fell ill and died. Li Kungsu then turned his forces against Lu Rengong and his son Lu Shouguang, capturing them both and bringing them back to Taiyuan. In 916 AD, Yelu Abaoji officially proclaimed himself Emperor of the Khitan. 5 years later, he led his forces south to attack China. Li Kungsu personally led his troops to battle and crushed the Khitan army, forcing Abaoji to retreat. Finally, in 923 AD, Li Kungsu launched a decisive campaign against later Liang. He defeated the last Liang emperor after 10 years of warfare, unified northern China, and proclaimed himself emperor, founding the later Tang dynasty. He established his capital in Luoyang and was known as Emperor Xuanzong of later Tang. From battlefield hero to theater enthusiast. After avenging his father and unifying the north, Emperor Xuanzong felt his enemies were defeated and China was finally at peace. Having spent his youth fighting battle after battle, he turned to pleasure and entertainment. As a child, he had loved theater and had befriended actors who performed in the palace. However, during his military campaigns, he had no time for such indulgences. Now that he was emperor, he revived his passion for acting and spent his days performing on stage with his favorite actors, neglecting the affairs of the state. He even gave himself the stage name Li Tianxia, meaning Li the world. The emperor gets slapped. One day, while performing on stage, he called out Li Tianxia twice. A fellow actor suddenly stepped forward and slapped him twice across the face. Shocked, the emperor and the other actors were dumbfounded. The court officials rushed forward to seize the offender. However, the actor grinned and said, "There can only be one Li Tianxia. If you call the name twice, it means there must be another one. Who is this second ruler?" Realizing it was a joke, Emperor Xuanzong laughed and let it go. The rise of the actor's influence. Because of Xuanzong's obsession with theater, the actors gained immense influence in court. They were allowed free access to the palace, and they openly bullied government officials. Court officials dared not retaliate and were often forced to bribe the actors to gain favor with the emperor. One particular actor, Jingtang, became Xuanzong's personal informant. Officials who failed to bribe him found themselves accused of crimes, leading to their downfall. At one point, Emperor Xuanzong even tried to appoint 2 actors as governors. His advisors pleaded with him, saying, "Your Majesty, the new dynasty has just been established. Your loyal generals, who fought with you through countless battles, have not yet received their rewards. If you grant official positions to actors before them, the court will not accept it." However, Xuanzong ignored the warnings and proceeded with the appointments. The fall of Emperor Xuanzong. This decision infuriated his military officers, many of whom had fought for years only to see unqualified performers receive high positions. Soon, the court fell into chaos. General Guochongtao was assassinated. General Li Siyuan, Li Qiong's adopted son, became suspicious of the emperor, nearly losing his life. Discontent spread throughout the army. Eventually, Li Siyuan rebelled and marched his forces into Bianjing, modern Kaifeng, intending to seize the throne. The emperor's final moments. Hearing of Li Siyuan's revolt, Emperor Xuanzong attempted to return to Bianjing. However, before he could arrive, the city had already fallen. As regional generals flocked to support Li Siyuan, Emperor Xuanzong realized he was completely isolated. Lowering his head in despair, he sighed. "This is the end for me." He returned to Luoyang and prepared to resist. However, one of his commanders, Guo, had a personal vendetta against him. Guo, originally a theater performer, had once been adopted by General Guochongtao. After Guochongtao was executed on Xuanzong's orders, Guo plotted revenge. Now seizing his chance, he led palace guards in a coup. Emperor Xuanzong tried to resist but was caught off guard. A stray arrow struck him, and he died on the spot. The rise of Emperor Mingzong. With Xuanzong dead, Li Siyuan took the throne, becoming Emperor Mingzong of later Tang. Thus ended the reign of the actor emperor, a ruler who won his empire through war but lost it to his love of entertainment. 179. The puppet emperor Jingtang. During the reign of Emperor Mingzong of later Tang, 2 powerful generals vied for influence. Li Tsongke, the emperor's son. Jingtang, the emperor's son-in-law and the military governor of Hedong, modern Shaanxi. Both were brave warriors, but their rivalry grew increasingly bitter. When Li Tsongke seized the throne and became Emperor Fei, the last emperor of later Tang, their conflict erupted into open war. Jingtang's betrayal, seeking Khitan aid. Determined to crush Jingtang, Emperor Fei sent tens of thousands of troops to besiege Jin, modern Taiyuan, Shaanxi. Outnumbered and on the brink of collapse, Jingtang sought advice from his advisor Sang Weihan. Sang suggested an extreme course of action. "If we cannot defeat the emperor's forces alone, we must seek help from the Khitan." At this time, the Khitan leader, Yelu Abaoji, had died. His son, Yelu Deguang, had succeeded him as Khitan emperor. Sang Weihan drafted a desperate plea for aid, in which Jingtang swore loyalty to Yelu Deguang, calling him father and offering to cede the strategic Yangyun 16 prefectures, a region in northern Hebei and Shaanxi. Opposition from Jingtang's generals. Jingtang's own officers vehemently opposed the idea. One of his top commanders, Lu Ziyuan, warned, "It is one thing to seek aid and pledge loyalty, but calling him father is excessive. Giving him money and treasure is one thing, but handing over our land is treasonous." However, Jingtang, blinded by his desire for power, ignored the warnings. He hurriedly sent Sang Weihan to negotiate with Yelu Deguang. Khitan intervention and Jingtang's rise. Yelu Deguang had long sought to expand southward. When he received Jingtang's proposal, he was overjoyed. Immediately, he dispatched 50,000 elite Khitan cavalry to rescue Jin. With Khitan support, Jingtang's forces launched a counterattack, crushing the imperial army. When Yelu Deguang arrived in Taiyuan, Jingtang personally greeted him outside the city, bowing and calling him father. He eagerly asked how the Khitan army had won so easily. Pleased with the flattery, Yelu Deguang boasted of his military tactics. Jingtang proclaimed emperor by the Khitan. After observing Jingtang's absolute loyalty, Yelu Deguang decided, "I have traveled 3,000 miles to aid you. I see that you have the makings of a ruler. I shall proclaim you the Emperor of China." Jingtang pretended to refuse at first, but after some encouragement from his advisors, he joyfully accepted. Thus, in 936 AD, the Khitan Emperor Yelu Deguang officially declared Jingtang as the ruler of China, establishing the later Jin dynasty. The ultimate betrayal, the cession of Yinyun 16 prefectures. In return for his throne, Jingtang immediately fulfilled his promise, ceding the Yinyun 16 prefectures to the Khitan. This land transfer marked one of the greatest territorial losses in Chinese history. The region became a permanent stronghold for the Khitan, allowing them to launch future invasions into China with ease. Jingtang's humiliation as the puppet emperor. Now completely dependent on Khitan protection, Jingtang ruled as a vassal of Yelu Deguang. He addressed Yelu Deguang as Father Emperor. He called himself the Son Emperor. He sent annual tribute of 300,000 bolts of silk. On holidays, he dispatched envoys with gifts to the Khitan emperor, empress, and nobles. If the Khitan were ever dissatisfied, they would send messengers to reprimand Jingtang. Even when Jin's envoys were humiliated at the Khitan court, Jingtang showed no concern. His court officials were outraged, but he remained utterly submissive. The death of Jingtang and the fall of later Jin. After 7 years of humiliating rule, Jingtang died in 942 AD. His nephew, Chongui, succeeded him as Emperor Chu Di. Unlike his uncle, Chongui refused to be a Khitan puppet. In his messages to Yelu Deguang, he stopped calling himself grandson and referred to himself simply as subject. Khitan invasion and the destruction of later Jin. Feeling insulted, Yelu Deguang declared war and twice invaded China. Although Jin's soldiers and civilians fiercely resisted, internal betrayal led to the final defeat of later Jin. In 947 AD, Khitan forces marched into Bianjing, modern Kaifeng, capturing Chongui. The later Jin dynasty collapsed. Yelu Deguang's rule over China and the mass revolt. Upon entering Kaifeng, Yelu Deguang proclaimed himself Emperor of China and changed his empire's name to Liao. However, his rule was deeply resented. Fearful citizens fled en masse. The Khitan soldiers plundered homes and wealth under the pretense of foraging. The people of Bianjing suffered horribly from looting and violence. When the oppression became unbearable, massive uprisings erupted. Peasant militias, numbering thousands to tens of thousands, took up arms. Rebels recaptured towns and executed Khitan officials. A powerful uprising seized 3 entire prefectures in eastern China. Seeing the scale of the rebellion, Yelu Deguang finally admitted, "I never expected the Chinese people to be so difficult to control." Realizing he could not hold the central plains, he abandoned Kaifeng and retreated north, claiming he was returning home to visit the Empress Dowager. Legacy of the Yinyun betrayal. Although the Khitan withdrew from the heartland, the Yinyun 16 prefectures remained in their hands. This territory gave the Khitan a permanent foothold in China, allowing them to launch repeated invasions over the following centuries. The betrayal by Jingtang, ceding Yinyun to the Khitan, remained one of the most infamous acts of treason in Chinese history. 180. Emperor Shizong of later Zhou rebukes Feng Dao. After the Khitan, Liao army withdrew from Kaifeng, a new power rose in the north. Lu Ziyuan, a former general of later Jin, declared himself emperor in Taiyuan and marched southward with his troops. His strict military discipline and support from the common people allowed him to rapidly reclaim Luoyang and Kaifeng. In June 947 AD, Lu Ziyuan established the later Han dynasty, making Kaifeng his capital. The short-lived later Han dynasty. Lu Ziyuan's reign lasted only 10 months before he passed away. His son, Emperor Yin of later Han, Lu Chengyu, ascended the throne, but his reign was plagued by internal strife. Distrusting his powerful generals, Emperor Yin secretly ordered the assassination of General Guo Wei in Yi, modern Handan, Hebei. However, this backfired spectacularly. Guo Wei rebelled, led his forces south, and overthrew later Han in 950 AD. The following year, he declared himself emperor, founding the later Zhou dynasty. The rise of later Zhou and the Northern Han Rebellion. As the first emperor of later Zhou, Guo Wei worked to restore order, reduce corruption, and promote talented officials. Under his leadership, the chaos of the Five Dynasties period began to subside. However, Lu Ziyuan's brother, Lu Chong, refused to recognize later Zhou. Instead, he declared himself emperor of Northern Han, making Taiyuan his capital. To resist later Zhou, Lu Chong submitted to the Khitan emperor, calling him Uncle Emperor and referring to himself as Nephew Emperor. With Khitan military backing, Northern Han repeatedly launched invasions into later Zhou. However, they were consistently defeated. In 954 AD, Emperor Guo Wei passed away without an heir. His adopted son, Chai Rong, succeeded him as Emperor Shizong of later Zhou. The Battle of Gaoping, Shizong's first challenge. As soon as Emperor Shizong ascended the throne, Lu Chong saw an opportunity. Believing that the new ruler was young and inexperienced, Lu Chong mobilized 30,000 troops and requested 10,000 Khitan cavalry to join his campaign. Together, they marched toward Luzhou, modern Changji, Shaanxi, aiming to conquer the Central Plains. When news of the invasion reached Kaifeng, Emperor Shizong immediately convened his ministers to discuss a response. He insisted on leading the army personally. His advisors objected. "Your Majesty has just ascended the throne. The people need stability, and your presence in the capital is necessary to prevent unrest. It would be better to send a general to lead the army instead." Shizong refused to back down. "Lu Chong is taking advantage of my father's death and my youth. He seeks to swallow the Central Plains. If he leads his army personally, how can I not face him myself?" Seeing his determination, most ministers fell silent. However, one senior official stood up in opposition, Feng Dao. Feng Dao, the opportunistic official. Feng Dao had been a high-ranking minister since the later Tang dynasty. Over the years, he served under 5 different dynasties, later Tang, later Jin, later Han, later Zhou, and even the Khitan when they occupied Kaifeng. No matter who came to power, Feng Dao always managed to secure a position for himself. When the Khitan occupied the capital, he immediately pledged loyalty to them. Because of this, successive emperors were willing to keep him as an advisor, recognizing his experience and political flexibility. Seeing that Emperor Shizong was young, Feng Dao tried to use his seniority to persuade him to stay behind. Shizong rebukes Feng Dao. Shizong firmly stated, "Emperor Taizong of Tang personally led his troops to unify China. How can I sit idly by and do nothing?" Feng Dao sneered and replied, "Can your Majesty truly compare yourself to Emperor Taizong?" Shizong, seeing that Feng Dao clearly looked down on him, angrily declared, "With my army, crushing Lu Chong will be as easy as smashing an egg beneath a mountain." Feng Dao scoffed, "But is your Majesty truly as strong as a mountain?" Shizong was infuriated. With a wave of his sleeve, he stormed out of the court. With the support of his other ministers, Shizong finalized his decision to lead the army. Feng Dao's fall from favor. After this exchange, Emperor Shizong deeply resented Feng Dao. Shortly afterward, Shizong assigned him to oversee the construction of Emperor Guo Wei's tomb. Humiliated and realizing his influence was fading, Feng Dao fell into depression and eventually died. The Battle of Gaoping, a decisive victory. Leading his army, Emperor Shizong marched to Gaoping, modern Shaanxi, where he encountered Lu Chang's forces. Seeing that Zhou's army was smaller, Lu Chang became overconfident. "If I had known they were so weak," he boasted, "I wouldn't have even needed Khitan reinforcements. Not only will I crush them, but I'll also show the Khitan how strong I am. Lu Chong launched an aggressive attack. His army overpowered Zhou's right flank, forcing some soldiers to retreat and others to surrender. Sensing the urgency of the situation, Emperor Shizong personally entered the battlefield, dodging arrows as he commanded his troops. His two trusted generals, Zhao Kuanying, future founder of the Song dynasty, and Zhang Yongde, each led 2,000 elite troops into the enemy ranks. Seeing their emperor fighting bravely, the Zhou soldiers rallied with newfound strength. With renewed morale, Zhou's forces fought like lions, crushing Lu Chang's army. The Khitan troops, seeing their ally in full retreat, quietly withdrew from the battlefield. Lu Chong, now abandoned, was forced to flee. By the time he reached Taiyuan, he had only 100 cavalry remaining. Shizong's achievements and untimely death. Following his victory at Gaoping, Emperor Shizong returned to Kaifeng in triumph. Determined to restore order and reunify China, he strengthened the military, reduced taxes to ease burdens on the people, launched major campaigns against southern Tang, reclaiming 14 prefectures north of the Yangtze River, led a northern campaign to recover lost territories. Just as he was on the verge of reunifying China, he fell ill. In 959 AD, after 6 years on the throne, Emperor Shizong passed away. He was succeeded by his 7-year-old son, Chai Zongxuan, known as Emperor Gong of later Zhou.